Beloved, welcome back to the homestead. I thought it might interest you to take a peek inside of my timber framing toolbox. This toolbox is called a grip. It is modeled after what guys back in the day would have used when they built things by hand. I don't build everything by hand. I use kind of a hybrid approach. I like to have an understanding of the old tools, how to use them, how to maintain them, how to sharpen them. But I also really enjoy modern conveniences that really speed things up. So my approach is kind of a hybrid approach of using both to get the best results that I can. It's kind of interesting, you know, I grew up in construction. My dad was a general contractor, and the amount of tools that a guy needs to build a modern house or to do a remodel usually means a full van loadout, sometimes with a trailer. And I always marvel at the fact that the carpenters back in the day and the shipwrights could do what they did and everything that they owned fit in a small grip like this. It's kind of a fun thing, but I'll go into mine. So I guess starting with the chisels, I use 2 chisels, typically the 1.5 inch. This is a Robert Sorby. This is not a vintage chisel. I actually bought this new, but I've got a lot of time on it. 1.5 inch chisel is really your bread and butter. When you're doing timber framing, usually your mortises, your tenons are going to be either 1.5 inch or 2 inch. I also have a 2 inch socket chisel. This is one that I restored. It's an old white, but I never use it. I find that a 2 inch chisel, it's just not that useful. It's too heavy. So I don't know when guys would have used them in the past, but I don't know that I've ever used one. The 1.5 inch is the bread and butter if I was going to have one, but traditionally guys would have 2. In addition to the framing chisels, I have a quarter chisel. This is one that I made the handle and the ring for as well. This is a socket chisel. This is cut at a 90 degree, and this is used for cleaning out corners when you're doing mortises. When mortise intended is a way of joining timbers and lumber together without using nails or screws or glue. And this is a corner chisel. Kind of niche, don't use it that often, but it is nice to have when you need it. I also keep in here a vintage Stanley Sweetheart, a 1 inch small chisel with the original handle on it for just detailed work and cleanup where the 1.5 inch might be a little bit clumsy. I rarely use it. All the projects that I've done, everything is the 1.5 inch. I had one of my subscribers made leather guards for me, which are really nice. It helps to keep it nice. I carry a draw knife. A draw knife it's in a leather sheath here, but it has a blade on it, and it's you've seen them before for pulling. So if you want to do chamfers on wood, or you need to debark or knock some wane off of some of your timbers, this is a nice tool to use. There's 3 compartments in the toolbox. I have, this is my Shop Fox mallet. This is what I use to pound on the chisels. It is a really dense, hard, heavy rubber material. You want something like this when you're striking the back of your chisels. You can see that they have a steel ring on them to keep the wood from splitting, but you'd never want to beat on these with anything really hard like wood or, well, maybe wood, but certainly not metal. But this I find to be really awesome. I like it. It stands up on your timbers. It's just handy, and this is one of those tools that just really gives me the fizz. I really like these guys. They're nice. In addition to, I also carry an extra sheath for my 1.5 inch chisel. You probably saw me wearing this yesterday. When you're doing your joinery, when you're fitting everything up, you're always needing to do a little shaving or a little modification, and chasing a chisel around is kind of inconvenient. So one of my subscribers years ago made this for me, a beautiful leather sheath, and I'll put this on my belt, and this stores or keeps my 1.5 inch chisel safe and handy. I guess also kind of like chisels, but it's not a chisel, is one of my most prized things, and this is my white 1897 timber framing slick. Some people thought that this was just a great big chisel. It's not really a chisel. It's certainly not something you would strike. It's very precious. 1837, my goodness. This is for leveling and flattening. So once I rough in a tenon to make sure that you get consistency, so it's not, you don't have any highs or lows when you're doing your joinery, you will carefully run this over there, and this, because it's so wide, it will knock down all of the high spots and gives you a nice clean tenon. Very, very nice this. I have a timber saw. This is a Japanese timber saw, and this is a beautiful tool here. It's a modern tool, but very well made. I made this sheath out of wood, Douglas fir, the tree of my people, but a very handy timber saw for cutting and cleaning up corners of mortises. I'm not going to typically use this to do big cutting. I'm going to relegate that to a Sasquatch saw, but for just small detailed work, this is a wonderful tool, Japanese timber saw. And finally, in this compartment, a square. This is a Ster square. A traditional square has a 2-inch on one side, an 1.5 inches. This is designed, or it was, for laying out mortises for tenons, or tenons as well, because they're either going to be 2-inch or 1.5 inches. And you don't see a lot of carpenters using these too much anymore, and it's a shame, because it is really, it's a pretty extraordinary tool once you realize how versatile it is. And my fun fact, my dad was kind of the old school carpenter. He was a very talented carpenter, and when he would hire guys, he would check their tools and see if they had a square. If they didn't have a square, he wouldn't hire them. The final compartment over here, I have a couple of vintage 1.5 inch Milwaukee auger bits. These are old school and very, very high quality. You can sharpen them. And the 1.5 inch is, sometimes I'll use those to help me hog out wood for cutting out mortises. You can chop them out with a chisel, but it's very tedious. And if you can put this in a drill or a beam drill, you can remove a lot of the material and speed up the work exponentially. And then the final compartment is all my layout stuff, which is really, really critical. The layout is so important. When I was doing like framing, traditional framing back when I was younger, you might work to 1/8 of an inch tolerance, quarter is probably more realistic. When you're doing joinery and timber framing, you actually work to a 1/64 of an inch. So tape measures and pencils are almost not precise enough. That's why I also carry in here a real precise ruler. I forgot about that. And that's anodized, and this is this is down to the 32nd marks, not 64. So you can really get precise. When I'm laying out mortises, when I'm really having to focus on joinery, I will use this, because a regular tape measure I find is too coarse. In the layout, bread and butter is a combination, or speed squares. The big one, I use the big one because this will handle up to 8-inch timbers, but I typically work with 6-inch timbers, and then a smaller one, which is a little bit more handy for 4x4 stuff. But speed square, very handy for layout. Probably the most essential tool are the combination squares. And these are tools, these are incredible tools. For not only are they a square, a level, they can give you a 45, but they're very handy when you're setting depths, when you have depths for lap joints and different things. And I have multiple of these, and I'll preset them, so when I'm doing my layout, I only have to set it and forget it, and I can use this to repeat. Or if I want to measure something, I find these to be indispensable. Again, you don't see these too often. I don't see modern framers probably don't use these anymore, but these are essential. 2 or 3, having 3 on hand is pretty nice. I also have an old school fold-out tape, which is a little bit more precise than a tape measure. If you really are getting down to the nitty-gritty where detail matters, I don't often use this. I can usually get good enough with a tape measure, but I used to use this more than I do now. And then I have 2 angle gauges. So this is a vintage one here, and this will help you to repeat and to set different angles if you're doing 45s or 22 and a half, just to make it repeatable. I have a smaller one here. This one's old school and vintage. And then I have a modern version here that's Japanese. It's a little bit bigger. And this one's all metal, but they essentially do the same thing. I just found that this, I don't know why that won't come out of there. Well, you get the point. I have a large compass. I found this at an antique shop. Some blacksmith made this by hand for doing radiuses and circles. Can you imagine building something like this? I mean, you can't really appreciate it till you see it close up, but this is handmade, all hand forged by a blacksmith. Absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe that I found it. It has an adjustment or screw right there for tightening it up. But man, isn't that cool? It's big too. That's a pretty big compass. And whoever made that, especially that hinge, was an absolute master carpenter. And then the final and one of the most important things is my small layout knife. This is a Stanley small layout knife, very precise, very delicate, has a nice delicate point on it. And when I'm laying out, especially using, working down to the 32nd or 64th of an inch, a pencil mark sometimes is too broad, and so I'll put this in there, and this is absolutely right on, and it gives me the ability to be real precise. And you can resharpen them, and I keep extra blades in the back. But a layout knife is also one of the essential tools. As far as modern tool goes, this is not a normal skill saw. You'll notice that this is bigger. This is actually this is a Skill Sasquatch. This is a 10 1/4 inch blade, so much bigger than the skill saws that most of you are probably familiar with. And the reason for this is that timber framing, you're using full dimension lumber, meaning a 2x4 is actually 2x4. A 6x6 is actually a full 6 inches rather than a 5.5 like you would buy at Home Depot. The traditional saws are not big enough to cut through them on one pass. This one here will cut through a full 3 inch, I think 3.5 or 3 1/4, a full 3 inch full dimension in one pass, rather than having to flip it over and do it twice. In a 6x6, you can cut it in 2 passes, where a 6x6 full dimension with a regular skill saw, you hit it from both sides and you still have membrane in the center and you have to hand saw it. So made of magnesium, so it's as light as it can be, but this is a pretty heavy saw. This is the Sasquatch. They also make one called the Bigfoot, which is even bigger. I don't know how big it is. It's like a 12-inch blade, and man, you got a man up to use one of those. They're monstrous. I would love to have one, but they're kind of expensive, and I don't do enough of this to really justify it. If I was gonna do a big project like a cabin or a house, I would invest in one. I would certainly buy one. But that really makes it up. I use modern tools when I can, but I also try to do as much by hand. The problem with the modern tools is, as convenient as fast as they are, they also make mistakes very fast. And when you have this material that we're using on this project, it's not something you can go and buy. So if you mess it up, there's no going back, there's no fixing it. You have to go back to the sawmill, and hopefully he's got time to cut another piece for you, and you just don't want to do that. So you have to, I'm reluctant to push too hard and too fast with modern tools, because the mistakes come so quickly, where when you're working by hand, it's a little bit more deliberate, and usually you're going slow enough where you can catch mistakes before they do something, before it's something that you can't fix or you can't repair. So that's it. That's my toolkit. Thanks for watching. May God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you all on the next video.